bleed green? Are you an ultimate Eagles football fan? Well, you're in the right place. This is Birds 365, hosted by the new Mac and Mac, Jody McDonald and John McMullen.
Here we go.
Who collectively have covered and talked about more than 50 plus years of Eagles football. Kick off your day with Birds 365. You'll get debate.
We love to argue.
You'll get the real story from inside the locker room. And you'll hear from some of the great football minds from around the region. You're about to become an Eagles insider. Get in the game. Join Jody Mack and Johnny Mack and join the football community that flocks to Birds 365. Birds 365 starts right now.
Welcome to the NFL. Let's go. Go.
And a good Wednesday morning, Birds fan, an undefeated Wednesday, because that's what your Philadelphia Eagles are, even though our attentions are a little split these days in Philadelphia with the Phillies doing what they're doing on the baseball side. Dallas week does grab every Eagles fan's attention, and we're here to talk about it for the next 2 hours. Your Mac and Mac guys, McMullen and McDonald, here to hang with you. Are you ready for a walkthrough Wednesday, Johnny Mac? Is it going to be a walkthrough Wednesday?
It is. That was kind of a late change. So, the Eagles had put a regular Wednesday on the schedule and all of a sudden shifted gears yesterday afternoon. We'll talk to Nick Sirianni this afternoon before practice, after the walkthrough. And see why he shifted gears. My guess is because the offensive line is banged up and Micah Parsons is there. That would be my best guess. And they want to get everybody as healthy as possible to deal with Micah Parsons and I still got to look at some Cowboys games and some Cowboys tape, but I assume it's a lot like last year and they're going to move him around to what the best scenario is to rush. So that could be inside, outside, either side. And if he's not the best player in football, he's catching up to Aaron Donald. He's you could argue he's been the most dominant defensive player in football. So he's tough to deal with, and he's even tougher to deal with if you're using backup offensive linemen. And as good as Jack Driscoll has been, I said it yesterday on the show, I want Jordan Mailata out there this week if at all humanly possible.
Right. And I give Driscoll a lot of credit for both games that he's turned in since filling in for Mailata, but Mailata's Mailata. There's a reason why the Eagles gave him the huge contract that they did. He had been phenomenal. You want to have all your best players available. If that extra day of non-practice is the difference, the Eagles are doing the right thing. We don't know that. They don't know that. Nobody really knows that. But we'll have to wait till Sunday night to find out. But I thought you made a good point there, and I think you got to give the opposition a little credit this week. I know that's not what most Eagle fans, I shouldn't say all, most
they don't
Eagle
want to hear
fans,
that.
They don't want to hear anything that's positive about the Dallas Cowboys, but reality is reality. The fact that they use Micah Parsons the way that they do, and I think Dan Quinn is one of the best defensive coordinators in the National Football League. Head coach, I'm not so sure, but I know he's a great defensive coordinator, and he's doing it again this year with them. You have to have other talented players to be able to do that. It really is a plus. If you can just plug and play a guy all along the defensive line, bring him from the left, bring him from the right, bring him from the middle. It makes it so much more difficult for a team to prepare for him and stop him. But when you're doing that, you're displacing a whole bunch of other guys, because there are some players in the National Football League that just know their position. They know how to play their position. We give Jack Driscoll a lot of credit this week because he's going from left to right, and he's going from inside to outside. There are a whole bunch of guys, Andre Dillard, who can't do that, who can't just, plug them into another spot. No, they're just not capable of doing that. Well, when you use Micah Parsons the way the Cowboys use him, you're displacing a whole bunch of other players that are asked to do different things, have different responsibilities. And to the Cowboys' credit, for the first 5 games of the year, there has not been a fall off. No matter where they put Micah Parsons along their defensive front, the other guys have filled the void and done what they've had to do.
Yeah, and that's always been a big thing with cornerbacks. I talked about that with Slay for a long time because people are like, just have Slay travel with who so and so years past, and what you just said is correct. You're displacing everybody else, and a lot of times, the Eagles have good corners now, so it's not as big of a deal. But in years prior, and when he was in Detroit, some guys can't just move, they can't move. So you can't move Slay as much as maybe you would like to. And yeah, the Cowboys have, they have DeMarcus Lawrence, who's comfortable moving to the other side if he has to be. They have Dante Fowler. They have Dorrance Armstrong. So, and then I think a lot of these guys, they realize, Micah Parsons is going to make it easier for us. So they've embraced it as well. And that's part of it. But you're right. I think a lot of fans don't realize that, it's easy to say it, but
Right.
It's not as easy to do it. And the Cowboys, and you mentioned Dan Quinn's one of the best defensive coordinators in this league. I joked about how Shane Steichen's, got the rocket on his what when it comes to potential head coaching jobs. And I got the email when Matt Rule got fired and everybody speculating in all the betting markets. And it was Sean Payton, obviously, number 1. Number 3 was Shane Steichen. Number 2 was Dan Quinn, right in between. I mean, he's a really, really highly regarded defensive coordinator. As you mentioned, had one opportunity to be a head coach. It wasn't terrible. So he'll probably get a second opportunity. But he's a really, really good coordinator and in the conversation for being the best defensive coordinator in the NFL. And yeah, Eagles fans probably don't want to hear that.
Now, does he play a spinoff of the Vic Fangio defense? Is he one of the disciples, or does he actually?
No, he's a cover 3 guy. He's he's a Seattle guy. So a little bit of a different tint. And here's the problem, and I've talked about this. It was really Tony Dungy, cover 2, became in vogue. Everybody started using it, and then there's a tipping point where it becomes, oversaturation. People get too used to it. People understand it. Not everybody has the same level of talent. Same thing happened with the Legion of Boom and cover 3 in Seattle. Everybody's copying Seattle. Now everybody's copying Vic Fangio and this multiple front and quarters coverage. There's going to be a tipping point. The good news for the Eagles is they have a lot of talent. So they're probably going to be at the back end of that tipping point, but there is going to be a tipping point.
Meaning that there'll be another new defense that everyone will follow.
Well, it'll become too easy to deal with, and yeah, people will shift to another sort of framework. And the good coordinators are always the ones reinventing themselves and adding things and doing different things. Dan Quinn, as an example, is not just what he once was as a Seattle cover 3 guy. He does a lot of different things. And he shifts things up a little bit, but most people in this league, and that's why they call it a copycat league, they follow what works, right? They say, "Oh, that works. Let's do that." And that's my issue with so many teams using the same scheme. I'm not a big fan of follow the leader. I'd rather be the leader. But if you have a lot of talent, and the Eagles have a lot of talent, you're just going to out-talent people no matter what you run.
Right. My hope would be, specifically for the Eagles, that they tailor their defense to fit the talent they have rather than try and pick a defense and put a square peg in a round hole. I think Harry Roseman has done a good job, second year working with Nick Sirianni and understanding exactly what he wants out of his defense. I think the Eagles acquired some players this year that give them a better chance. I'm okay with the Vic Fangio defense as long as you've got the players to play it, even if the rest of the league knows that you're playing it and they're getting ready for it altogether too often during the year. If you got the talent, that you should still be able to be an effective defense. The Cowboy defense has been very effective. Certainly Micah Parsons is the guy who makes that go, but they've also got a very talented corner in Trayvon Diggs. And you and I have talked on the show before about what Trayvon Diggs is. He's a big play guy. He takes chances. He's fast enough to get in, jump routes, make big interceptions, and turn games around on a dime. But he also, in taking those chances, can be beat. That he gives up big plays, that guys can get behind him. If you're Shane Steichen, Nick Sirianni at all on the offensive side, you going at him? You trying to avoid him? Do you treat him like one of the 11 guys on the opposite side of the ball on Sunday? How do you think they are tailoring or tweaking their game plan, knowing Trayvon Diggs is what he is?
That's been part of the fun of the Eagles, and that's what I like about the coaching staff. Like a lot of teams say it's about the opposition on a certain week, but the Eagles prove it. I mean, they play completely different from week to week. And last week you saw, look, I'll be honest, they drove
bubble screens.
They drove me crazy with that nonsense. But Arizona blitzed a lot, and that was their answer to the blitz. The early scripted stuff worked really well with Dallas Goedert. But that was their answer for the blitz. And very few teams blitz more than Arizona. In other weeks, you look at, speaking of the Vic Fangio scheme, you look at Minnesota, which is way behind the Eagles on the spectrum of using it. And you saw some of that soft coverage, and the Eagles were able to take advantage of it, take advantage of those soft spots down the field. I think they're going to take some shots down the field. I hope they're going to take some shots down the field, maybe double move. They have the receivers to do it. Jalen Hurts has proven that he's a very good deep ball thrower when they allow him to do it. And I shouldn't even say that, because I think a lot of the bubble screens was also Jalen Hurts making that decision in the moment.
Right.
But yeah, I think it's going to be in the game plan to try and take advantage of the aggressiveness of Trayvon Diggs. Not a lot, but a few times. And when you have A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, you can win a battle or two, even against a really good player. But you got to be careful. And one of the best things, maybe the best thing about Jalen Hurts this year, of all the flowers you want to throw at Jalen Hurts, I think the biggest bouquet should be, guy takes care of the football. He takes care of the football. And I don't want to hear about it, an interception here and there, bad throw. Everybody has interceptions except Aaron Rodgers, but everybody has interceptions. I mean, the guy takes care of the football, and I didn't see that coming. I got to be honest with you.
You're right. Aaron Rodgers doesn't throw picks. He just gets balls batted down in the red zone when he needs a touchdown to be able to get a game.
Well, you don't like Aaron Rodgers. You're like the only one in the history of the NFL that doesn't like Aaron Rodgers.
John, I'm on record as saying.
Well, by the way, not personally. A lot of people don't like him personally.
Right.
I'm talking about.
And if he thinks mushrooms are going to change the world, more power to him. But no, I'm on record as saying he's got the best skill set of any quarterback I've ever seen play, and that includes that Brady guy. Rodgers got a better skill set to play quarterback in the National Football League. but the ring is the thing, and he has come up short in the playoffs. And I just to put that out there every once in a while to balance the overabundance of the praise for
AJ
Aaron
Brown,
Rodgers.
the latest. I told you that story. That was amazing. By the way.
No, what story is that?
But really, interceptions though I was talking about, so I had to look it up. So here's the last. I can't even go back. Since 2011, 6 in 502 attempts, 8 in 552, which is terrible. 5 in 340. That's completions. 5 in 520, 8 in 572, 7 in 610, 6 in 238. Got injured that year. 2 in 597. 2 interceptions in 597 attempts. That was 2018. 4 in 569. 5 in 526. 4 in 531. Unbelievable when it comes to and it's easier. The modern NFL helps, but those numbers are still ridiculous. But Jalen Hurts, he takes care of the football. He really takes it. And then every once in a while, you had the bad throw that should have been intercepted by Jalen Thompson. Took a chance at the goal line that was it was also Jalen Thompson with the Quez Watkins throw. And everybody goes nuts. I'm like, overall, again, context. The guy takes care of the football.
He has this year. He didn't last year. You just ran down
this year.
The Rodgers unbelievable track record, decades worth of not giving up the football, not throwing picks. Jalen threw more than his fair share.
No, yeah.
So far this year in 5 games, he's done a nice job of taking care of the football. I think the overall is Jalen going to be Rodgers-like?
No, I don't even expect. I mean, I can't expect that, but contextually, for most NFL quarterbacks, he's doing a tremendous job of taking care of the football.
Well, let's see what he does this week, because he's playing the best defense he's played this year, the most opportunistic defense, and I think it's my guy Kemsky who sold me on this during the offseason. There has to be a drop-off in the plus-minus for the Cowboys. It was so big last year, they can't possibly sustain that. Well, guess what? They're number 2 in the NFL again. Now, number 1 is the Philadelphia Eagles at +9. They've got the best turnover ratio in the NFL. Tied for second again is the Dallas Cowboys. They're +5 and have 7 interceptions already this year. So it'll be a nice litmus test for Jalen doing a great job protecting the ball for the Eagles Hurts this season. All right, he's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. We got 2 good guests coming your way today. Usual spot for our buddy Mike Gill from down the shore, 97.3 ESPN, the Sports Bash. He's going to join us in less than 5 minutes. And Gary Myers, a guy we've had on the show with us before, a longtime NFL writer, NFL author, Hall of Fame selector, great football guy. Thought it'd be a good week to get him on because, believe it or not, Gary started his career down in Dallas writing for the morning news covering the Cowboys. Now, that was 30 years ago, but that goes back. Jerry was the owner of the team when Gary moved his tack from Dallas up to New York and became more of a national guy and working on some very good NFL shows, television shows as well. Gary's going to hop aboard. I thought Dallas week would be a good week to get Gary up. So Mr. Myers will join us in about an hour from now. But coming up next, Mike Gill of 97.3, the Sports Bash down the shore, is going to jump in with Mac and Mac here on Birds 365.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction, go with trust,
Go Birds!
and go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
Welcome to Pond Lehocky. We've helped over 100,000 injured and disabled workers obtain benefits, as well as some of the biggest settlements in the state. If you've been injured at work, give Pond Lehocky a call.
Score and save in southeastern PA and Delaware with Colony Pools this football season, and let the experts close your pool with a custom Merlin safety cover in green for the birds. And if you join our Winter Watch team, we'll give you another 20% off, and Colony Pools will handle it all. Keep your tiles on your pool, not in your pool. Fly with Colony right now, Birds fans. Visit flywithcolony.com.
Jeff D'Ambrosio, Destination Downingtown's 5-day used car super sale. Jeff puts an end to high prices now. 5 days of the best car, truck, and SUV deals ever. Over 1,000 vehicles, every make and model. Stop overpaying. See Jeff today and get a quality car, truck, or SUV now. The 5-day used car super sale. Experience how easy it is to deal at Jeff's. Nobody treats you better. Nobody gives you more. Jeff D'Ambrosio, Destination Downingtown. GoJeffAuto.com.
Wednesday edition of Birds 365 with Rebecca, McMullen, and McDonald. Wednesdays is undefeated Wednesday, and it's usually Gill Day here on Birds 365, and that's the case again this week. He's out on the back porch. Mike Gill, our buddy from down the shore, ready to jump in with us. Let me ask the first question here, Johnny Mac. Mike Gill, on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being, oh, yeah, I put my own money away for the Super Bowl because the Eagles aren't getting picked off in the NFC. Of course they're going to the big game come February, back to Arizona. 0 being win. No. The other team handed them the game on a silver platter. They didn't really win the game. They didn't earn the game. Between 0 and 10, you get the extreme ends of the opposite spectrum. Where would you rank the Eagles' win on Sunday against Arizona? How?
Oh, Jody, I actually thought it was pretty impressive. I mean, 4-0, Dallas coming up. You know, you go on the road to Arizona, a place they haven't played all that well, and you found another way to win. I mean, to me, these are the good teams. I don't look at the aesthetics of a win. I look at time, place, when it fits into your schedule. I know they don't have Hopkins. They're not at full strength, but people care too much about the aesthetics and the score. You got out of there with a win, and you showed you can win in another way. I mean, they have been winning in a variety of ways. They've been blowing teams out. They've been sacking the quarterback. They've been putting up big points in the second quarter and then kind of riding away. They needed to get into a fist fight, and they showed if they got to get into a fist fight, they can put their dukes up and start swinging at you too. Aesthetically pleasing? No. Impressive over a 17-week schedule where 1 week you're just not going to have it? I think I'd give it about a 7.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm with you, Mike. I was looking at the spot, and I was really teetering whether to pick Arizona. Ultimately, I picked the Eagles because I thought they would out-talent the Cardinals, and ultimately they did. Although, you know, if Matt Prater's there, it's probably going to overtime, and who knows what happens.
Yeah.
But, you know, you take advantage of the spot. And the spot as a whole was a bad one for the Eagles. That's why I was thinking about Arizona, because as you mentioned, you have Dallas the next week. And obviously there's a human nature aspect, big NFC East game. The Cowboys are playing well, shockingly, with Cooper Rush at quarterback. Yeah, I thought it was And I think winning is a skill in this league. You have to learn to win. And I think what you say about they've been able to win different ways, and you mentioned Detroit, they had to, off-schedule offense, Jalen Hurts. Minnesota, passing game. The running game has been in there where they just go for 200 yards against Jacksonville. Now you see them win this game. They do a better job, whether it's just doing a better job in the personnel department and picking the better backup kicker.
Well,
hey,
listen, John and Jody, how many teams are going to win a football game? We see teams that can't handle their starting offensive line. How many teams are going to win a football game when 3/5 of their line miss part of the game? I mean, generally when that happens, it's a disaster for these teams. The Eagles went without Kelsey, Dickerson, and Mailata for a sizable part of that game and still were able to just run that game out. Now, when the game late in the game, when they ran the game, I think it was like a 17-play drive. It's kind of got lost in the sauce because the Phillies are
not for me. That thing that was
but
almost,
who wins?
Yeah.
How many teams win a football game with their third left tackle, their second left guard, and their rookie center playing a lot of snaps?
Not Kelsey missed 3
Kelsey was back in within a couple of plays, and when they had that very impressive take this 17 play, we're running it right down your throat, and there's nothing you can do about it. Dickinson was back in the game.
No. I said when push came to shove, they had their guys late in the game, and I think you saw them lean on those guys for that 17-play drive. You got those guys back, and they said, look, try to stop this, and they couldn't, and they got the 17-play drive and really ran that game out.
Correct.
Yeah, it's still impressive because Opeta played far more than Dickerson. Driscoll's out there. Kelsey's amazing. You think he's done for the year, and he's out for 3 snaps. That's the second time I've seen it. He did the same thing in Detroit a couple of years ago. I think it was Detroit. Missed a snap. You think he's out for the season. He's back in after halftime. But that offensive line is tremendous, and that's the second time they did the same thing in Detroit. Everybody was hand wringing. 4-minute offense. They run out the clock. Everybody in the building knew what was coming. Detroit couldn't stop it. Same thing here. They weren't able to pin. It wasn't quite as in some ways it was because it was almost 8 minutes, 17 plays, 3 timeouts, even though they were helped by an injury. But they couldn't push it in. It's still that was so impressive to me to be able to do that, to run the football with backup offensive linemen in this league, as you mentioned. It's just not done. And the Eagles can run the football against anyone. And I don't know who to give more credit to, so I'll ask you, Mike. Is that the offensive line or is that Jalen Hurts? Because people are so freaked out by Jalen Hurts keeping the football, the backside especially, that they just open up space for the other runners.
Well, it could be a handshake. It could be a combination. Is that because of his ability to do that, it has teams on such high alert, and they're so good up front that they can pick and choose how they want to run the ball against you. I mean, they can RPO you to death and have Jalen Hurts be the guy. But I think what makes him, so dangerous is he knows when to pick his spots. He's not just recklessly running because he does have the ability to throw the ball, and he trusts his offensive line. A lot of these teams, they don't trust their offensive line. They can't get it done up front. So the quarterback has to do, he'll try to do too much, and he runs too much. I don't think Jalen Hurts has any problem handing the ball off to Miles Sanders because he knows that push is coming from those 5 guys up front, and we're getting that 2, 3, 4. And people, have been talking a lot about getting that bigger back in here. I think it's becoming evident that the Eagles are just saying, no, our bigger back is Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, he's the best. He is the best short yardage back in football.
Yeah.
The best.
So I think Hurts gets a lot of credit, but the offensive line is right there with him because Hurts has the trust in him. So it's almost by proxy, I trust you. You are leading the path for all of us. So the offensive line, not sexy to talk about, but right now, I mean, the difference between them and some of these other teams is clearly they are way better up front than the reason why Minnesota's and those teams we can't take serious is they can't block. When push comes to shove, they can't block and the Eagles can. That's the difference. Minnesota's 4-1. They're beating up on everybody. They look like they didn't belong on the same field.
They're not beating up on people. They're winning.
Well, I'm talking about if you're watching the records and saying, well, they're 4-1.
Yeah.
They are, but the problem is
problem.
they're not looking as impressive because they can't block.
All right, since we all agree the 17-play drive to basically put the game away against the Cardinals this week was very impressive, that was the Eagles imposing their will on the opposition. Dallas comes to town this week. They've got one of the better defenses. They're coming off a week where they kind of did to Matthew Stafford what the Eagles did to Carson Wentz. No chance, no shot. You're going down. 5 sacks. They're second in the NFL in sacks at 20 as a unit. Is this a running week for the Eagles? Do they
100%.
once again say, we're going to run the ball down your throats? Michael Parsons, make a nice tackle on Miles Sanders 4 yards down the field. Okay, fine. We'll give you credit for it, but we keep moving the sticks. Is that going to be the Eagles' game plan? Heavy run against the Cowboys come Sunday night.
I think 100%, Jody. This team, Dallas, gets a lot of sacks. They get a lot of pressure. They do not stop the run very well. They're small. And this is the kind of game where you take advantage of Parsons. You run right at him. The Eagles' offensive line, I don't know what Mailata's status is, but, he's the kind of guy, you get him matched up, you run right at Parsons and make them stop you. And then, I think they're vulnerable. Diggs is a great player, but he gives up a lot of big plays. So a lot of play action, shots down the seam. This could be a Quez Watkins type of game where he just, you lose track of him. He flies down the seam and gets a big catch. But, run the ball and then take your shots down the field as opposed to more of the underneath stuff that you've been seeing that gives Dallas a shot to get to the quarterback. So, Jody, I think the run game this week, it's going to be fun. Sunday night watching just a slosh of runs. I don't know what the weather's supposed to be like. I'm not implying it's supposed to rain, but it might look like that rain game with 50 runs.
I'm with you. I would run it right at Micah Parsons. I'm surprised teams haven't tried to run it Hassan Reddick.
Nobody can run. They can't block.
I know. They can't block. You're right. It's Wednesday, guys. I feel like I do this every week.
Another one.
Another player of the week. Any guesses?
Got to be Cameron Dicker, the kicker.
It is Cameron Dicker, which is kind of weak. Come on. He made a 23-yard field goal to win it. I mean, come on. Jimmy Kemp.
Jody, you asked me last week about
no other special teams player came up big.
I know. That's why I don't know. I got to look at the whole league. But that's
Jody asked me last week about winning the game with Dicker, the kicker.
Yeah, he did win the game technically.
He did.
So he is the special teams player of the week.
All right, so let me ask both of you guys a question. Mike, if you this is probably more of a Johnny question than you, if you'll allow me this. If Jake Elliott's good to go, Dicker, the kicker, retain his practice squad spot? We know he won't be active because Jake will, but usually these guys, you're in, you're out. They're on the practice squad, basically like a pit stop on the highway, a rest stop. And then they're out the door thereafter. Will getting special teams player of the week honors merit him a practice squad spot for at least 1 week?
Mike, I think it does. I think here's the thing with Dicker. He can also punt. So you have the basic, you have the 2 backups in one. Now, I think ultimately it will be, do they need to spot down the road? Maybe they have an injury at a certain position where they might need to spot. But I do think it saves him for a couple weeks that they'll keep him around.
I think you got to reward the guy.
As a backup, not only as a backup kicker, but also as a backup punter, even though Aaron Siposs might have had his best game ever against Arizona, that consistency's not there yet. So
how many teams have a kicker on their practice squad?
No, usually because of injury, somebody's dealing with somebody. And then you're right. They usually, or if they have a bad kicker and they don't trust them.
I feel like so many kickers have been hurt this year and nobody picked this kid up.
Well,
and nobody picked this kid. I mean, I know he was in a camp and then he got to Baltimore, but you said he was there as a punter, not a kicker. So many teams have had kicking issues and nobody had him on the Rolodex.
Well, the Rams signed him as an undrafted guy, and he was out there for most of camp. And Matt Gay's a pretty good kicker as well. So, it's not like he lost to a terrible kicker as a rookie. So people knew about him. But I give the Eagles credit, usually when you're in that situation, and the Cardinals were in the exact same situation. The Cardinals have a very good kicker, one of the best long-range kickers in NFL history, to be honest. And he got hurt. And they want the veteran routes and the proven route. And I say that laughingly, as Jody knows, because he watched Amendola kick for the Jets. And then it was a disaster in Kansas City this year when Butker got hurt. And they went with Amendola because he's got experience kicking in games, and the Eagles are like, we like this kid. Let's give this kid a chance. And they were right, and the Cardinals were wrong.
Now, has it been confirmed? Did Milton Williams? I got people texting me all week that Milton Williams blocked that ball, but
I don't think he did. Yeah, we're going to get in the locker room today. Milton's certainly going to be asked, and I've already told him he should say yes either way. But
because he could have won special
I want the
teams
truth,
player.
Milton. Don't be lying. Don't listen to McMullen. Tell us the truth. Either you tipped it or you didn't.
He would have won special teams player of the week if he admits
Could
that.
have.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah, that's true. The coach said no. He didn't think he hit it watching the film, but the players were off. Michael Clay talked yesterday. He talked more about the push in the field goal block as a whole, the unit as a whole. So by the way he phrased it, it was kind of like, no, he didn't get it, but he was close.
Well, I don't know, John, if you guys discussed this, but the Fox, were they on Fox? The Fox leading up to his kick, you know how they always record the kicker making kicks in pregame to show his distance. Every kick went off to the right, every single one.
Yeah.
And then sure enough, boom, it was almost the same trajectory of every kick that he had kicked in pregame.
Yeah. Well, I joked. Yeah, I think it landed in New Mexico because as soon as he hit that thing, it was like, oof. It was.
Here's what I would say to Milton Williams. Tell him, even though he didn't touch it, he gets credit for it, because if the ball had gone straight, he definitely would have smacked it. But it was taking such a right-hand turn, the shankopotamus that it was, that's the only reason that Milton missed it.
Yeah. But either way, you're right. They probably would have had the special teams player of the week. So 5 out of 5. Can they go 17-0 with 17 players of the week, Mike Gill?
The way this season's going right now. Although I'll tell you what, it's almost been a different guy every week too. That's the thing, and that tells you about this team. Forget who's winning these awards; they're frivolous. But the fact that it's something different means somebody else is standing out, and that's another sign of a good balanced team. You know, who's it going to be next week? 1 week it's Hurts, 1 week it's 8. You know, they're just giving you different guys, and there's different candidates. And I feel like this team is still kind of feeling itself out, right? I mean, especially John Gannon on defense. I saw a lot of people being critical of him all week long. They gave up 17 points.
They give up 17 stinking points. What do people expect in the modern NFL? It's just
they want sacks. They want sacks and blitzes. They could give up 3 points, but if you didn't sack and blitz, he played too soft. I don't like the way he called his coverage. They gave up 17 points. I'm thrilled.
Didn't tackle well. You know, when they don't play defense, they didn't play defense as well as people think they should. They didn't tackle well in Detroit. They didn't play well. They didn't tackle well in Arizona. It wasn't as bad as Detroit, but that's when they don't play well, they don't tackle well. That's been
how much, John? You had Murray, the threat of Murray, which was by far the biggest threat of a running quarterback. How much did that kind of change the way they kind of sat a little soft because of having someone having to kind of watch him?
Well, you definitely don't want to play man coverage against a quarterback like that. That's why so few teams do it against the Eagles. The same thing. I mean, if you're playing man coverage and you have your back to Jalen Hurts, just think about that. He's going to run right up your back. Same thing with Kyler Murray. You almost have to play zone.
This is your classic. Let them catch the ball underneath and make tackles. If you don't tackle, it's going to look bad.
Yeah. And, you know, people blitz for different reasons when you have Arizona. And by the way, the Eagles blitzed, and I get that the Eagles blitzed a lot because they went to the sort of theory that teams do against other mobile quarterbacks. You blitz to keep them in the pocket, but you want a very disciplined approach. And I think that's the key to it. And I think Damo, our buddy Paul Domowich, what I'm trying to look it up. Yeah, Eagles blitzed on a season high 34.9% of the Cardinals pass plays. But they were blitzing for a different reason. I think people think, there are run blitzes. When you're blitzing people like Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, you're doing it for a different reason than when you're blitzing Kirk Cousins. They had all those zero blitzes that turned into interceptions. You're doing it for a different reason. I think a lot of people don't understand that.
Yep, I'm surprised to hear that number. What was it? 34% of the plays. I was surprised.
34.9. Yeah,
I'm seeing them. They did a lot of like zero up the middle blitzes, inside blitzes. People think of blitz, they think of stuff coming off the outside, just going after the quarterback. But you see the blitzes up the middle. They're filling those gaps, the 1 hole, 2, 3, trying to keep the stuff from up the middle happening and flushing stuff to the outside where they had some containment. I thought Vance Joseph, by the way, called a pretty good game. They blitz a lot. They blitz like 46% of the time. Yeah. And I thought he picked his spots really well. And I think Sirianni alluded to it. They called a lot of screens to try to combat the blitz, but they disguised their blitz and picked their spots a lot better than I think the Eagles were thinking. And I think that first drive was epic. They were outstanding on the first drive, but I thought Arizona said, okay, we can't be so aggressive. They scaled back a little bit. And I thought the chess match was on after that. And I thought Vance Joseph did a pretty good job of picking his spots.
Mike, a story that's gotten some pretty good legs to it, media and fans, is what the heck were they doing with A.J. Brown? He doesn't start the game. They start in 13 personnel. He's standing there on the sidelines. Then they put him in, and they almost throw it to him exclusively for an entire set of down. And then he just kind of disappears into the ether. And I get it. He's your $100 million man. He's been dominant for the first 4 weeks of the season. But the opposition does get a say in how much they're going to allow your star player. They want to take him out of the game. They can take him out of the game. That's going to leave other people wide open. The Eagles did settle for a lot of wide receiver screens and bubble screens and the like. Do you make as big a deal as some people make out of how do you get A.J. Brown that little involved in any game that he's in an Eagle uniform?
Well, on Friday on my show, I do game balls, and my game ball was for Goddard. I thought Goddard would be the guy. I thought their defense, their linebackers are smallish. They're not that good in coverage. And, I thought Goddard was just due for the big game this week. You saw, by the way, Devonta Smith had 10 targets, kind of quietly almost. Like it seemed like they picked their spots. A.J. Brown had those 3 catches and then kind of went away. But I think the game plan was probably more set up for the guy that I thought was Goddard. I thought Goddard would be the guy. I didn't think it was going to be all those screens and everything. But going back to the first week, we talked about the same thing. How do we get anybody involved? I know Brown is the big guy because of the paycheck. But that Goddard is a beast, man. He's a monster. And if the Eagles want a game plan to get him the ball, I got no problem with that.
Yeah, the Eagles said behind the scenes that was going to be the plan. Dallas, it was going to be a big Dallas Goddard game, and it worked out that way. And the scripted stuff, the screens drove me nuts. They drove everybody nuts. But the scripted screens worked. The blitz screens, they got too redundant. And Jalen Hurts probably pulled that trigger a little bit too often. But, Shane Steichen spoke yesterday, and he got asked that question, Jody and Mike, why no A.J. Brown? Why so little A.J. Brown? And he said, that's just the week, and that's just the way. No reason. Well, there's a reason, but they don't want to let us in on the reason that, and maybe they will later off the record, but there's a reason you do things. So for whatever reason, they thought that Devontae Smith was probably better equipped to handle this boatload of blitz screens than A.J. Brown. I don't know if I agree with that, but it's week to week, and they have good players. That's part of the out-talenting teams. Maybe you can make a mistake game planning, but you're just going to out-talent teams because you have better players. And I think that's kind of what happened in Arizona.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think back because Brown had that one drive where he seemed to be a big part of it. But
That's the first drive.
I was going to say, it was the first drive of the game when they seemed like and then after that, I think Arizona made some more adjustments. I don't know what the adjustments were to Brown. I didn't get a chance to watch the all 22 to see if they did anything different and said, hey, you're not throwing him the ball. But again, I have no problem. That's the thing with, as you just said, are you sad because Devontae Smith got 10? This guy was a first-round pick who many people thought was the best receiver in that draft class. He just gets overshadowed, and some of it's monetary, right? I mean, Brown is more physical. Yes, he's probably a more physical, complete receiver than Smith, but Smith is not like some secondary other guy. You know, they just have so many ways, and that goes back to the conversation at the beginning of this, which is they have so many different ways, and they had another way to get you on Sunday.
Even though it seems like Jalen Hurts has been the quarterback of the Eagles for a pretty good long period of time now, he really hasn't. 4 games at the end of 2020, full season last year, and now 5 straight wins this year. Do the math. It's not a ton just yet. He's played the Dallas Cowboys twice. He's 0 for 2. He hadn't been really good in either of those 2 games, and he got the pass last year because they didn't need the last game, so they sent the JV out there against the Cowboys. But he's gotten his tail kicked twice by the Cowboys. Every game is important to the Eagles this year, and still very important to Jalen Hurts in his evaluation and quest for a $40+ million per year contract, which could be coming his way. How much does this game mean this week? Because it's the Dallas Cowboys, the Jalen Hurts.
Oh, I think it means a lot, guys, because not only for Hurts, for the season. I mean, Dallas is showing their defense is legit. They're going to be in this mix, and you got to start thinking about home field, right? I mean, you got to start thinking about that. This would be one of the teams that will be in the mix, you would imagine, for that. So you got to get this, especially the fact that it's at home. You know, you got to go down there later on in the season, and that game could be for a lot. But if they beat you in this game and they say they're within a game apart, that game down there is a big, heavy favorite for them. So this is a big game. If you're thinking Super Bowl, right? And I think everybody at this point is thinking Super Bowl. You've got to have this game. You've got to have home field advantage. And it's kind of, I don't know how you guys feel about this, but the Phillies are playing. Everybody's all on that train. I remember when the Phillies were really good in 08, 9, 10. And there was a week where the Eagles played the Giants and the Cowboys in the same week, and the Phillies were in the playoffs. And the Giant Cowboy stuff got swept under the rug a little bit because of the Phillies. I don't know if that's happening right now, but is that a good thing that there's not so much attention on this Dallas week as there generally would be? And keep in mind, they have a bye after this. So you throw the kitchen sink at them at this game, because if you're thinking Super Bowl, you got to have the number 1 seed. You got to get that home field advantage, and this game is paramount to get there.
And, you know, the Eagles don't want to hear this, but coming up, you mentioned it's this game, it's the bye. Then you have a bad Steelers team, a bad Houston team, a bad Washington team, what has been a bad Indianapolis team. Boy, man, if they get this one, you know, we could start talking about Bob Groats going 10-0, I think.
All right, but be careful, because they do have that they don't stink New York Giants squad 2 more times this year.
Yeah.
McMullen's he's ready to roll back the Giants stink stance.
I got to roll that back. I rolled it back. I did say the
is
Giants
it that, or is it, again, what challengers are in the NFC at this point? Or
the challenges are the Eagles and the Giants and the Giants and the Eagles. You can focus in on those too, because you can say the same thing. If you want to say, well, who have the Giants beaten? Well, you can say the same thing about the Eagles.
You can say the same thing about everybody.
Teams, and the NFC isn't all that great.
Yeah.
You can say the same thing about everybody. I said, literally, the only teams that any fan gives you credit for beating is Kansas City and Buffalo. If you beat one of them, you beat somebody. But other than that, you could beat any team in this league and no one's impressed.
And the 2 teams that have beaten those 2 teams, are you impressed with the Colts?
No, and did you watch?
Colts beat Kansas City. Are you impressed with the Dolphins?
Nobody.
And Kansas City.
Dolphins beat Buffalo.
Realistically, Kansas City at home the other night really should have lost that game to the Raiders.
Yeah, they should have. Yeah, they should have. And that's the thing. I was pushing back against Seth on our post game show, and I'm like, this team's 5-0. There's one undefeated team in the NFL. There is something to finding a way to win these games. It is not the coaches talk about it all the time. Part of it's cliche, but it's not easy to win in the NFL. Now, I'm not a big fan of these stats, but the Eagles started 2-5 last season. And Jalen Hurts, went on that run, and all of a sudden they're 5-0. We're almost at a calendar year of a season where Jalen Hurts is 5-2, 10-2 as a starter over his last 12. That's pretty good. He's 24 years old. He's not turning the football over. I mentioned that earlier, Mike. I didn't see this coming. Is it fair to say that this might be turning into something special?
Well, in a league, guys, that is set up for parity and to get knocked off here and there, the Eagles are finding ways to not be a part of the pack that is finding ways to lose. They are finding ways to win those games. When the Packers, everybody likes them, they find a way to lose to the Giants. You mentioned Kansas City. They found a way to lose to a poor Colts team. Teams are finding ways to lose. The Eagles keep finding ways to win. And one of the reasons why they're finding a way to win, John, is because of the guy either under center or in shotgun. I guess you can't say under center.
Usually in shotgun, but yeah. Well, quarterback sneaks. Don't forget those, because he's the best quarterback
he's taking
sneaker.
it directly from Kelsey.
Yeah. But I think it's more than, Jalen Hurts is one of those guys that you're beginning to see that when he's your quarterback, he's just so competitive and has such an aura about him around that team that you won't have one of those teams that just goes through one of those miserable seasons. He feels like the kind of guy that just simply won't allow you. But I think this goes back to Ron Rivera the other day talks about, what's the problem? Well, the quarterback. He's not blasting Wentz as much as the instability of the position that they have had at that organization. But here's the problem and the difference. Everybody, I'm sure people watching here, and maybe some people, many people, they all wanted Howie Roseman out. He doesn't know what he's doing. He needs to go. He's the one constant, and I'm not giving him all the credit, but my point is the Eagles organization and Dallas to some point, they have stability. Washington is a disaster because they have no stability. They have no plan. If something happens, they jump off the train and try to start it all up. You can't keep doing that. And I think you're seeing the Giants now. They're finally feeling like we have a stable situation here. The Eagles' stability is part of all of the success, and it hurts that they said, hey, let's go with this guy. Let's make him the guy. It's a lot of the organization, I think, anyway. The stability that this organization has had has allowed them to be have this season right now.
All right, MG, I'm not going to ask you to preempt yourself, but I do want some insight here. So if you feel the need to give me 3 or 4 names that would fall under your game ball category on Friday, who are the key guys for the Eagles this week, Sunday night against the Cowboys? They have to play well if the Eagles are going to extend and stay undefeated, go to 6-0.
Well, like back in the day, I heard Ron Rivera in an interview yesterday. He was on a podcast, and he said one of the names that they thought about for the Commanders was the Hogs, right? Can we give the ball to the Eagles offensive line? Is that a team ball right there? The whole offensive line gets that ball.
They do it all the time. When they run for 200, the offensive line, every single member gets a game.
That would be, Jody, that would be my off. I do offense and defense. I'll give one out on both sides who I think will be there. The offensive line, to me, has to be the key in this game. You've got to neutralize their front. That's where they're the best. That's where the Eagles are the best. When you go, mano a mano with the best units, your unit has to beat their best unit. For the Eagles to win, the offensive line has to be the victor. So you can, by proxy, I guess, say Miles Sanders, but I'm going to go offensive line because they never get the NFC anythings of the week. But they should be the game ball this week. And on the defensive side of the ball, we don't know who's going to play quarterback for them. right? We have no idea. But I think Pollard is the guy that could be the key or the tricky guy in this game. They've been running the ball. That's what I like about not having Dak, is that I think they've done a really good job of, and my thought is when they get Dak back, are they going to stick with this game plan of just kind of giving it to Elliott and Pollard? But I think Pollard is the kind of guy who gives the Eagles some issues. So TJ Edwards would be a guy for me on the game ball side because Pollard comes out of the backfield. You got Elliott coming up the middle. So the linebacking spot, TJ Edwards would be the guy, the key on the defensive side.
All right. At Mike Gill Show. Follow him on Twitter, 97.3 ESPN South Jersey. Drive time 2 to 6 every day. I'll be on with Mike later today. You mentioned that Dallas offense. You know, a couple years ago, we were talking about how many weapons they had. Now we're talking about Tony Pollard. He's a good player, but that's not Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, and on and on and on, Ezekiel Elliott. What they once were. Is this a game? And I can't believe I'm saying this because I never thought we'd be in this position with the Eagles. Is this a game where the Eagles should try to push it offensively and outscore this team? Because this is not an explosive team. In other words, I think the Eagles could out-explosive this team. And I'm shocked that I'm saying that, but I don't think they can keep up with Philadelphia in a Paul Westhead, run up and down the floor type of game.
Yeah, it's not going to be week 1, Detroit, 38-35, back and forth they go. No, I don't think Rush has that in him, right? 10 completions, about 100 yards last week. One thing he hasn't done is turn the ball over. They don't ask him to do much, but, you got to put it in position to make him start to do stuff. And do I think it's going to be a shootout type of game? No, I don't think that the Cowboys can keep up with them.
No, that's my point. So if the Eagles go, deep to A.J. Brown, 7-0, if they keep pressing, if they get up 14-0, this game's over, right?
Let's just say the problem is I don't know that Philadelphia scores more than 24 either. I think that Dallas defense is pretty darn good.
No, that's fair.
And
you got to block 11.
If we're talking about, and I know you guys are probably short, but if we're talking about what they have to do, running the football doesn't amount a lot of times to a lot of points if the clock's running. Although some of their biggest scoring outputs, Detroit in the snow, they scored 50. They ran the ball all over that team. They ran the ball 50 times 2 weeks ago and scored a bunch of points. So, but no, I think it's a low scoring game. That defense is legit, but it should be fun Sunday night. I hope the Phillies game isn't at 6 o'clock because I'll be watching the 7th, 8th, and 9th inning at the same time, and that'll be too confusing.
Right. And I was going to ask, where are you going to be Sunday night? The
right
Gill
behind me there, man. I got
over the ocean. You're going up to Lincoln Financial Field. Where are you going to be watching the game?
I got Sunday two night? TVs right there. I got Phillies and Eagles. I got the space heater right there, ready to go.
All right, so he's out on the porch with the hoodie on. Mike Gill, always a pleasure. Thanks, bud. We'll talk to you again next week.
All right, guys.
Thanks,
Sports
Mike.
Bash down the shore, 97.3 ESPN. That's Mike Gill. All right, Johnny Mac coming back. Gary Myers, NFL author, longtime columnist, former Dallas guy many moons ago, but GM, one of the best writers in the country, will be on with us here on Birds 365.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
Jeff D'Ambrosio, Destination Downingtown's 5-day used car super sale. Jeff puts an end to high prices now. 5 days of the best car, truck, and SUV deals ever. Over 1,000 vehicles, every make and model. Stop overpaying. See Jeff today and get a quality car, truck, or SUV now. The 5-day used car super sale. Experience how easy it is to deal at Jeff's. Nobody treats you better. Nobody gives you more. Jeff D'Ambrosio, Destination Downingtown. GoJeffAuto.com.
Score and save this football season on your car insurance. Before the next game, save up to 40% on your auto insurance policy. That's right, 40% savings. Call an Audible this season and contact the Del Val Insurance Group. They're an advocate for you, not an insurance company. That means they'll get you the right coverage and save you up to 40%. Call managing partners Fran or Jim of Del Val Insurance, 215-354-0122, or score and save at dvigi.com. dvigi.com.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer 3 major services, the first one being basement waterproofing. The second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs. And then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
Over the last 17 years, we've built a reputation of growing award-winning teams across the country. Staffing is not easy, but that's what we do every day, all day. The key to our success is storytelling, asking the right questions to find the right people. Hi, I'm Gary Kane, president of Kane Partners. We want to be your staffing partner.
Welcome back, guys. John McMullen and Jody McDonald on an undefeated Wednesday. It's going to be a walkthrough Wednesday, too, when McMullen gets over there. But you should get a chance to hear something from the coach after walkthrough Wednesday today. And we'll see if we get an update on any of the injured Eagles, whether they will or won't be back. Chances are the coach will keep that under wraps because he loves those competitive advantages.
We're going to get an estimated injury report today, Jody, because of the walkthrough. And yeah, the coach isn't going to talk about it before. I don't get it. But, big week. You want to get Jordan Mailata back. Hopefully, he was pushing to play in Arizona, so maybe it's better than people realize that he could be back. Avonte Maddox has now missed 2 games, so he's probably going to be close to getting back in this game. That'll be big for the defense. Although Josiah Scott played pretty well in Arizona.
He did. Much better than he played the week before.
Yeah, much better. So it was nice to see him up his game. But you want Avonte Maddox out there. And then Jason Kelce, he's going to play. How healthy is he going to be? Isaac Seumalo played through his ankle injury last week. Played the entire game. He's banged up. Landon Dickerson's banged up. So, everybody, 4 out of 5 of the offensive linemen are banged up, the typical starters. And Lane Johnson's, has had 3 ankle surgeries. So he's always, at his age, and you always got to be concerned. So I think that's what the walkthrough is about. They want to get this offensive line as healthy as possible for this game.
All right, John, you were singing the praises, rightfully so, of Jalen Hurts earlier, and the fact that he just hasn't thrown interceptions with the amount that he handles the football, which includes running plays, including the quarterback sneaks that get the Eagles into the end zone. Pretty damn important. He just doesn't give the football up. His numbers are what his numbers are. How many players do you think right now in the NFL are ahead of Jalen Hurts in MVP voting? As per a major wagering site that put odds on the MVP.
I see, the way I think he's 3rd or 4th in the wagering, most of the wagering. I could be wrong, but I think he's in that range. But if you want my personal opinion, there are more, I think, probably ahead of him in the real world for this reason. And by the way, I don't agree with this, but I think because he doesn't throw passing touchdowns. When you talk about MVP and you talk about even Offensive Player of the Year in the actual NFL awards, they give it to guys who pile up numbers. And They're not going to look at the context of domination. Now, maybe if he goes 17-0, maybe that changes the thing. But in general principle, they're going to give it to somebody with explosive numbers, and he doesn't throw enough passing touchdowns. That which is stupid. I'll be the first to say it, but it is what it is.
Here's where I think he can make up for the lack of passing touchdowns. If he sets the record for most rushing touchdowns by a quarterback in the history of the National Football League, which is that there's a yin and a yang to it. The yin being, they used to actually have running quarterbacks way back when, before the McMullen and McDonald time, which, yes, wasn't the Ice Age, even though we both been around for a long time. You got to go way the hell back to when the quarterback used to be the number one runner of the football. But that was when they were playing 12 games a season. Now they're playing 17. So it does kind of balance itself out. He's got a chance to have more rushing touchdowns than any quarterback in the history of the National Football League. He does that. The lack of touchdown passes will go by the board.
Maybe, and I hope so, to be honest, because I hope people take the context into it, the context of the way he's playing. And we'll see. I always say, you mentioned how long we've been around, and I say this all the time, and I tell the story. I've been covering this league for a long time, and I've never once played fantasy football in my life, not once. And the reason why is because back in the days of Troy Aikman, I was so turned off by people telling me Troy Aikman couldn't play because he didn't put up these big numbers from a passing perspective. And I said, this is stupid. I want nothing to do with it. And I've never played it from that point forward. I say the same thing about Jalen Hurts when people bring that up to me. Oh, he doesn't throw passing. I don't care. Look at what he's doing. Look at this impact on the game. Same type of thing. And I hope you're right. I hope people have gotten more educated to the game. I think they are, by and large. I think fans are more educated than ever. Doesn't matter how you get it in the end zone if you get it in the end zone.
Right now, and this was at vegasinsider.com, which is a website that I use. They really do cover everything, so they're just a really effective resource. 3 guys in the National Football League that have shorter odds than Jalen Hurts for MVP on vegasinsider.com. Lamar Jackson, 5.5 to 1. And oh, by the way, if you ask me right now, who's more of an MVP, Lamar Jackson or Jalen Hurts? I would say Jalen Hurts, even though his odds are slightly higher. That Mahomes guy coming off his 4-touchdown performance on Monday night, which, by the way, I don't think we touched on this yesterday. How bad are the Las Vegas Raiders? How dumb are the Las Vegas?
No, they're not bad. They're dumb.
No, they're
from
bad.
The head coach.
When I'm saying they're bad, being poorly coached is a big part of that.
Yeah.
Jason Kelce catches 4 touchdown passes.
That would be
best
something.
Receiving tight end we've seen in forever. Every single one of them is inside the red zone. It isn't like he shook loose and left the guy in the dust or whatever. How do you not cover Jason Kelce inside the 10-yard line? And Mahomes just kept throwing it to him, and it wasn't like he made these great thread-the-needle over-the-shoulder catches. He's friggin' wide open. How do the Raiders let something like that happen? Poorly coached. They're terrible. Anyway, Mahomes is 5 to 1, and Josh Allen is your favorite at 2 to 1. So Allen 2, Mahomes 5, Lamar 5.5, Jalen Hurts 6, and then comes a pretty big drop off down to Justin Herbert at 12 to 1. I'll give you one that for the 2 or 3 Cowboy listeners, because we got the stream here. Appreciate all the guys that are on, Nathan and Dominique and Daz, and appreciate all our streamers. Is a Cowboy fan who sneaks in there every once in a while, ticks everybody off. For the Cowboy guy, how about Micah Parsons at 200 to 1? 200. If you want Josh Allen, you get 2 to 1 on your money. You put up 100, you get 200. 200 to 1 on Micah Parsons. He's the MVP of the Dallas Cowboys. Sorry, Cooper Rush fans who, he's 4-0. He's 4-0 because of Micah Parsons. That's why Cooper Rush is 4-0. Take 200-1 on Micah Parsons as MVP, Johnny Mac?
Well, if you want to waste your money, go ahead. I mean, it's not an insult to Micah Parsons. It's just
It is wasting your money on his MVP.
Well, no,
that's absolutely an insult to Micah Parsons.
No, it's not, because I mean, I think the last defensive player to win NFL MVP was Alan Page. So, you know, they don't give it to defensive players. So that's all I'm saying. They don't give it to defensive players. And I'm going to look to make sure I'm correct on that. Who the last defensive player to win NFL MVP was? Alan Page, 1971. So
that was a while
go
ago.
ahead.
Yeah, it's all right. So it's been 50 years. But if the Cowboys, and I think, oh, by the way, I'm on record. I said this here yesterday. And we'll say it on tomorrow's show and on Friday's show as well. I'm going to pick the Eagles. I think the Eagles are going to win. I think they're the better team.
Take it back, Jody. Lawrence Taylor won it in 86. So I was looking, I said, if Lawrence didn't win it, nobody's winning it, but he did win it in 86. So I want to correct that. So it went 71 to 86 and now 86. 86.
All right, so it hasn't been 50 years. It's only been 35 since a defensive player won the MVP. I'm just saying, if the Cowboys, which I'm not suggesting this is happening because I'm on record, I think the Eagles are going to win this week. I think they're going to win by at least a touchdown. By Friday, I'll decide whether I want to go more like double digits or even 2 touchdowns. I really do think the Eagles are winning this week. But if they don't, if they lose, if the Cowboys win and Micah Parsons gets 3 sacks and the Cowboys pull into a tie with the Eagles at 6-1 and are tied for the best record in the National Football League, they'll have just taken down the only undefeated team. Oh, you know what that number is going to go from? From 200-1 to 50.
Well, yeah, all right. So I just gave you the number. So we go 71 to 86. If anybody's going to win it, it's going to be Micah Parsons. Now we've just gone through probably, I don't know, the greatest 5-6 year stretch a defensive player has had in a long time. Aaron Donald wasn't able to win one. If you got the money to waste, throw it out there. Throw it out there on Micah Parsons.
If you're talking 200-1, you throw down $5, you win 1,000. That's if you got you might spend $5 on Powerball is what you want. Mega Millions, you want the 400 million. Maybe I'll tell you this right now. There's a better chance that Micah Parsons winning MVP of the National Football League.
Well, if anybody's going
to, Pete from next door winning the Mega Millions drawing this week.
If anybody's going to win it, it's going to be Micah Parsons from the defensive side of the football. Unfortunately, and this is for Eagles fans as well, this is a 2-horse race. Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes. You know, everything's barring injury, but
so you're dismissing Jalen too.
Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah. Unless the Eagles go 17-0, that might change things. And they might get to 10-0. So who knows?
How about your boy? Aaron Rodgers, 40-1. He's won back-to-back MVPs. Get his 3rd in a row. You get 40-1 on Aaron Rodgers.
I would say if you want value, I would go Rodgers before Parsons.
Okay, so wait a minute. You like Rodgers better than Micah?
Well, as for NFL MVP, yeah. I mean, if he goes nuts, and we all know he has the capability to do that, and it's an offensive award, is what I'm trying to say. It's an offensive award. That's what it is. Unfortunately, and by the way, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. It should be, but you know. J.J. Watt, I think people forget, he won 3 Defensive Player of the Year awards in a row. I think people forget how dominant he was. I just mentioned Aaron Donald. We've seen some of the greatest defensive players ever in recent history. I just mentioned maybe the greatest defensive player ever, Lawrence Taylor, the last one to win it. If Lawrence Taylor isn't, it might be Reggie White. Reggie never got it. It's an offensive award. That's what it is.
But that's why you're getting 200 to 1.
Yeah.
That's where you're building up that value, because he is absolutely been the best defensive player in the league this year, and he's 200 to 1 to win the MVP. I just think there's some pretty good value in there. And if you're going to play it, if you're me and you're looking at these future markets like I do, you're always looking for value. The value will disappear if he has a big week this week, because it's against the Eagles. They're the only undefeated team. If he is a major reason why, and maybe the number one reason why the Cowboys win and get to, which, oh, by the way, let me repeat, I'm not predicting. I think the Eagles will win it this week. I'm just talking about a hypothetical here. If it happens, it'll go from 200 to 50. The biggest movement in the MVP.
And by the way, 50 is still value. 50 is still value. Not nearly as much, but that tells you he could have 3 sacks, as you mentioned. The Cowboys beat the only undefeated team, and he's only going to 50 to 1 because it's an offensive award. That's the problem. That's the problem.
We shall see. All right. We're hoping to get Gary Myers up here next. I just texted with Gary, and he said he did get the link, so that's good. He should be ready to join us. All-time NFL writer and Hall of Fame selector Gary Myers going to jump aboard here with us on Birds 365.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
The faces you know. The faces you know. The team you trust. The team. The Delaware Valley's leading news program. Action News. Action News.
Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean.
with John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. You got your Mega Mac Birds 365 guys. We have an esteemed guest joining us. One of the best football writers I've had the pleasure to read over the last 40 years, which means I'm old and he's old. But he's also very good at what he does. NFL author Gary Myers joins us here on Birds 365. Mr. Myers, I haven't talked to you since the season started. How's your football year going?
Pretty good. Good morning, Jody and John. Boy, it's a good game Sunday night. Finally, we got one we can all really look forward to.
Yeah, well, there's been some, here in Philadelphia, obviously, people are very excited, Gary, as the only unbeaten team left. What do you think? We'll start there. What do you think of the Eagles? Do you think they're for real? The NFC certainly looks less obtrusive than the AFC side. Green Bay seems to have taken a step back. Tampa Bay seems to have taken a step back. The Rams certainly have. That's been a big surprise to me. Is this team a legitimate contender?
Well, I can say that at the beginning of the season, if you asked me to pick the last team standing as an undefeated team, I would not have picked the Eagles.
Fair.
So they are a surprise to me, and mainly because I have to admit I did not believe in Jalen Hurts going into the season. I obviously all the intangibles that you'd ever want in a quarterback, plus he's, can really run the ball. I just didn't think he can throw it well enough to lead a really productive offense. But, with those two great wide receivers that he has, especially A.J. Brown being such an accomplished guy in the NFL and so productive, and Devontae Smith, providing the speed and as a great second option, and they're running the ball. I think they're for real, and their defense is playing really well. Who would have thought? I mean, we've made fun of the NFC East now for years.
Yeah,
they just have not been a really competitive division. But after 5 weeks, they have more victories than any other division in the NFL. And Cowboys have won 4 in a row with a backup quarterback. The Giants are a huge surprise, just beating Green Bay in London. And obviously the Eagles at 5-0 are, right at the top of everybody's power rankings right now after the first month plus of the season. So I'm beginning to believe in them. 17-game season, it's a long way to go. We've seen teams off to slow starts, really turn it on, and teams off to 5-0 starts fade. So I'll reserve judgment on putting them in a Super Bowl quite yet. But, certainly people in Philadelphia could not have expected a better beginning to the season.
That's very fair. There is only one undefeated team, but there are 2 undefeated quarterbacks, and they're playing off against each other on Sunday night. Cooper Rush is 4-0. Now, I've watched enough of the Cowboys games or watch film thereafter. Cooper Rush isn't wowing me, but he plays smart, a phrase I know Gary Myers has used and John McMullen's used and Jody McDonald's used, a game manager. That's what he is, and he's real good at it. He's 4-0. If Dak Prescott is medically cleared, he's their quarterback, right? They're not sticking with the 4-0 undefeated Cooper Rush. Are the Cowboys this week, Gary?
No. If Dak Prescott is healthy, I mean, he's a $40 million quarterback. You're not putting him on the bench to keep a guy who you've cut. I forgot how many times they've cut Cooper Rush over the years.
Yeah.
He actually was in Giants camp. I think it might have been last year. I lose track
a couple
there.
Weeks.
Yeah. And he didn't make the team even with Jason Garrett here. So, I mean, he's played better than anybody could have anticipated. But when Dak is healthy, and the way Rush has played has given the Cowboys the flexibility to wait until Prescott is 100%. But when Dak has reached that point, I know I heard some things that Jerry Jones said on the radio on Tuesday, when Dak can spin it. He kept using the expression when he can spin it. We used to say, when he throws it okay without any pain, now he's got to be able to spin it,
Yeah.
When he's reached that point where the coaches are satisfied that he's throwing the ball well, he'll be starting. And that very well could be Sunday. I don't think they're going to, tip their hand to the Eagles any earlier than they have to. There'll be a little gamesmanship involved, I would imagine, that McCarthy's going to say during the week. Mike McCarthy will say during the week, well, we got to see him practice a few more times. And I think it'll become evident to the people watching practice in Dallas if they let the writers, watch any more in the warm-up period, based on who's taking the first team snaps, who will be starting on Sunday night. At this point, with all the positive reports coming out about Prescott's recovery from the thumb surgery, try saying that a bunch of times, that I think he'll start on Sunday night.
Well, you're right, Gary, in the fact that obviously, there's been this, I won't say large group of people, but some saying, you got to start Cooper Rush. When Dak Prescott's ready, and he's the starting quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys. But I'll ask it to you this way. Does the success of Cooper Rush and his ability to win games, his ability to not only keep this team's head above water, but keep them relevant, and as a 4-1 team, the second best record in the NFL, does that allow the Cowboys to be more cautious with Dak Prescott? Because Jerry was out there 2 weeks after saying maybe he can be back, back, because they were so desperate. Can they be more cautious because they're winning football games?
You mean in terms of when they bring him back, or how they play him?
In terms of when they bring him back. In other words, you're talking about the spinning of the football. Before it was like, we got to get this guy back. Jerry's on the radio saying, maybe this week, maybe, and all of a sudden they keep winning football games.
Yeah, John, I think that's a good point. But when he's ready, he's going to be ready, and they're going to play him. It's going to be a pretty cut and dried situation that if they think he can throw the ball, he'll play. If they think that he doesn't have enough zip on it yet, then he won't play. I don't think the fact that Cooper Rush has played well for 4 games will necessarily impact the timeline now on Prescott, because from everything I hear, it sounds like he's ready. He's given them. He's going to hand the baton back to him at 4-1, when I think most of us would have thought, the best it could have been is 2-3 at this point without Dak. The change that I think we're going to see in Dallas is they're going to run the ball. They're running the ball so well right now. And I think that's opened some eyes on the coaching staff that they don't have to have Dak thrown it 40 times a game, especially early on before they got Gallup back. CeeDee Lamb was the only one, that you really were concerned about as a defense. I think they've learned another way to win here. And I think that's one of the huge impacts of what's gone on with Rush over the last month, is that they've learned that they can win, the old-fashioned way, and that's running the ball. And if Dak is just a little bit limited in how he can throw it, but they feel he's, they can clear him to play, I think you'll see that trend continue, that they're going to try to run it on the Eagles, as good as the Eagles have been up front.
Gary, I'm going to ask you to kind of lend a helping hand to Shane Steichen, Eagle play caller this week. The Cowboys have 2 all-pro defensive players. Everyone knows them. Everybody respects them in Michael Parsons and Trayvon Diggs. Would you attack them, or would you try and game plan around them? Sometimes with a front 7 guy, best bet is to try and run right at him. Sometimes with a player like Trayvon Diggs, who's going to make big plays. He's going to get intercepted, led the league in interceptions last year, but he also led the league in giving up 40-plus yard plays. How do you handle the 2 Pro Bowl defensive studs of the Cowboys? Do everything to minimize them and keep the ball away from them, or go right at them?
Well, Jody, I think you need to put DeMarcus Lawrence in there too.
Okay.
He's been playing very well this year. I was at the Cowboys-Giants Monday night game a few weeks ago, and their pass rush was, they were dynamic. And Lawrence just ate up Evan Neal, the Giants rookie right tackle, who they really, really like. And he'll go against Lane Johnson on Sunday night. So that's going to be a matchup, to really keep an eye on. But, yeah, I think Trayvon Diggs is one of those feast or famine guys that he can pick it off, as he proved last year with 11 of them, but he can also be beat. So I wouldn't he's not Deion Sanders. He's not Darrelle Revis, where you cut the field in half and you just say, okay, well, I'm going to forget about that side of it and just throw the other side. He can be beat. I think he's given up a bunch of big plays this year as well. I'm not sure what his interception total is, but he's not nearly on the pace that he was last year.
Tough to keep up that pace.
Yeah. That was the most interceptions in the league since Everson Walls had 11 in 1981, 40 years. And nobody had as many as Diggs had last year. But I think you throw at him. I wouldn't run away from not run away. I wouldn't run away from Parsons, and I wouldn't hesitate to throw at Diggs. I mean, you take a chance because the guy has, he's a former wide receiver, so he's got great hands, and he really battles for the ball. But I think he can be beat.
Well, let's keep it there and talk about Micah. Gary, you got to see arguably the greatest defensive player of all time.
No, don't, John. Do not.
No, I know. I'm not
saying.
I'm not. I was going to. Jody and I. The only reason I bring it up, Jody and I were talking about MVPs, and I said you got to go back to Lawrence Taylor to talk about a defensive MVP.
Okay,
and then before
end the sentence right there. Do not be comparing.
Michael
Parsons in his second year to the greatest defensive player.
But how? And I'm not. And I just bring up the point that that's how good you have to be at MVP, right? As a defensive player.
Okay.
But as far as impact on the game and the NFL in today's environment, in year 2, is Micah Parsons already the most dominant defensive player? This is the era of Aaron Donald. Is he already the most dominant NFL defensive player?
Well, that's a good. I think he's. Let's see if I can put it this way: he's the most versatile, dominant player in the league right now because they can line him up in a bunch of different spots, and you always have to account, for where he is. I do want to see a little bit more. I want to see him. I want to see him Sunday night in a really big game where the Cowboys need him to dominate and see how he does against a really good offensive line, against a team that's going to scheme against him, and see what he can produce. But he's obviously been incredibly impressive, and so many teams are going to regret passing on him, including 2 teams in the division. I mean, the Eagles traded with the Cowboys to get ahead of the Giants to take Devontae Smith, to get that wide receiver. And then the Giants traded down out of the next spot when they could have taken Micah Parsons. And that trade's, just been a disaster for the Giants just in terms of, they took Kadarius Toney with the trade down. Now they got Kayvon Thibodeau with the Bears pick. Oh, it was Neal. It was one of the 2 that they, Giants. So, they recouped a little bit in this draft, but I think anybody, if you redraft, the Eagles take Parsons or the Giants take Parsons rather than what they did. So we'll see both Smith and Parsons on the field together. Now, this is always one of the great rivalries. I think that the years that I lived in Dallas, and that was 81 to 89, the Washington and Philadelphia were the Giants, the Cowboys' 2 biggest rivals. And then the Giants started getting good in the mid 80s. And so that the NFC East was just a tremendous division to cover. But I think right now, as it stands, considering how the 2 teams have done over the last decade, I think the Cowboys' biggest rival is definitely the Eagles. And I know for sure that the Eagles' biggest rival is Dallas. So I would imagine with a night game and fans having a little time in the parking lot prior to the game, that it might be a little bit of a rowdy atmosphere.
That's probably a pretty safe bet, Gary. Exactly right. You mentioned that you went to the Cowboys-Eagle game earlier this year, and the Cowboys, I watched that one on TV, and their defense, their ability to get pressure. That game, Parsons wasn't really all that big a factor.
Right.
I think the Giants decided, we're not going to let Parsons beat us, so everybody else did. That's how good the defense is of the Cowboys. But I want to ask you about the Giants because they too are 4-1. Much surprise to me, much surprise to my partner, Johnny Mack, who's continued to say they stink. We can't.
No, I backed off it. I did
4-1.
say that. I did say that. Yeah. But I backed off it.
How are they doing it?
Well, I think Brian Daboll is Daboll. That's how he pronounces it. It gives them something they haven't had since probably 2011 when Coughlin did a great job, and that's a really good coach. Ben McAdoo, his first year got him in the playoffs, but he was bad his second year, didn't make it through his whole second year, and then they had Pat Shurmur and Joe Judge. So every Sunday when the Giants went on the field, they were at a disadvantage coaching. And I'll tell you this, I think there's one play here where kind of tells the story of what's happened to the Giants so far. And that was late in the Tennessee game in the opener where the Giants scored a touchdown to get within a point. And I can't remember how much time was left, but it was less than a minute. And maybe even way less than 30 seconds, something like that. And Daboll goes for 2 instead of kicking the extra point and taking the game into overtime. And I think he won. He was very popular up to that point. The players really like him. But he completely won over the locker room by showing faith in his guys, by saying, the heck with overtime, let's win the game right now. Now, that's different than what Josh McDaniels tried to do on Sunday night, going for 2 with 4.5 minutes left and leaving himself a point down when they didn't convert the 2-pointer. But at that point in the game, with say 30 seconds or so left, and the Giants had momentum, having just drove down the field to score, Daboll made a statement to his team that I believe in you guys. And they had his back. Barkley made a really nice run, broke a couple of tackles to get into the end zone. The Giants win the game by a point. And I think they've carried that feeling over the last 4 games. And they could have won the Dallas game. It was a close game throughout. And, winning that game in Green Bay, I think, against Green Bay, rather, in London.
London, yeah.
I think it's got Giant fans more excited than they've been, certainly since they made the playoffs in 2016. I mean, it's amazing when you think about going into this season. Over the last 5 years, the Giants and Jets tied for the worst record in the NFL in that 5 year
rough stretch for New York football. Yeah.
Yeah. So people here, they're really excited about the Giants. I know we don't necessarily want to talk about the Jets, but they're really excited about the Jets being 3-2 at this point, and both teams being, over 500, and it's October. I mean, it's already October. I'm saying the season here has always been over before the baseball season's been over. Like the Giant Jets season's always been over the last few years before the Yankee season is over.
Yeah.
And so it's fun around here right now to have 2 teams to talk about that are doing well.
Well, and I think you're right. I think the Giants finally got it right at coach and GM as well, hopefully. I think the Jets got it right at GM with Joe Douglas. We'll see with Robert Saleh moving forward. I do want to talk about coaching from the Dallas perspective, Gary, because so many people in this league, not in the league, but so many people who cover the league, fans certainly, I get this feeling they don't like Mike McCarthy as a coach at all. I don't know. He's won 10 games 9 times. He's on track to do it again. They might have the most highly regarded group of coordinators. Dan Quinn, everybody knows Dan as a defensive coordinator. Kellen Moore is a young offensive mind. John Possel's a special teams coach. What do you think of the Cowboys coaching staff keeping the head above water with Cooper Rush? How big of an impact has that been?
Well, I think that Mike McCarthy kind of came to Dallas having overcome the stories that he and Aaron Rodgers had a falling out. And at that point, Aaron Rodgers' words carried a lot of weight. I think he's lost some credibility for a variety of reasons over the last year or so. I'm talking about Rodgers. So I believe that McCarthy kind of had to overcome some of the things that Rodgers had said about him, or at least stories that were written about their relationship. And then he hasn't necessarily been the best game manager, or at least he hadn't been in his first year. He made some really curious decisions. After taking time off, after he got fired by Green Bay, apparently he accumulated this think tank of former coaches, and they got together, studied analytics, and then he started making some really bizarre game management decisions, and people got down on him in Dallas. And then they lose the playoff game at home last year to San Francisco when they really were the better team through the regular season. And I think you combine that, John, with Sean Payton sitting there, warming up in the bullpen, and people looking for McCarthy to slip up so you can get the Payton narrative, really at full speed. But you're right. He has excellent coordinators. I think that, Dan Quinn will have another opportunity to be a head coach in this league for sure. And he did some interviews last year. I'm not sure if Jerry talked him out of taking any of these jobs. Jerry can be very persuasive with his checkbook. And Dan might have looked at it like he was the coach in waiting if something happened to McCarthy. So he stayed. And I can tell you this, that being a defensive coordinator in Dallas when the team is doing well and getting paid top dollar by Jerry can be a lot more fun than being a head coach of a bad team.
Good point.
Yeah.
And so he's probably looking for the right spot. Kellen Moore is one of these young – I'm not sold on him necessarily as being a head coach right now, and I know he's had some interviews as well. John Fossil I've known for a long time, through his dad, Jim, who unfortunately passed away within the last couple of years. But he's a really creative special teams coach. Sometimes takes too many chances, but a lot of times, his risks do have a high reward. So McCarthy has surrounded himself with a really good group of coordinators, which means McCarthy himself is just left to be like the CEO of the Cowboys and run game day. And he does appear to me, now I don't get to see every Cowboy game, but it appears to me he's gotten better with that and is not one of these coaches like Brandon Staley with the Chargers who's looking to reinvent the game on a weekly basis with some really strange decisions.
Gary, unfortunately, we've reached the juncture of the season that always annoys me because I do a national show on Sundays, and the more to talk about, the better. The bye weeks kick in this week, and one of the teams that is the Raiders. By the time the Raiders return the week after, will Devontae Adams have been suspended for what he did to the cameraman the other night, walking off the field after the Raiders lost to the Chiefs?
Boy, that's a really good question, Jody. I'm not sure. I think the league will certainly investigate whether – I mean, I saw the tape of it, and it just looks like the cameraman was in his way, that he didn't do anything he didn't say anything to Adams. It didn't appear that way, to instigate a situation. You have a player running off the field who is upset. He had a play nullified that looked like a good catch initially. Then he and Hunter Renfrow run into each other on the last offensive play of the game. So, the emotions are running high. I think he's apologized. There's no excuse for what he did. I don't know if he. I honestly don't know the answer to that question.
Okay.
How the league is going to look at that. If he's going to get anything more than get fined by the league, whether they're going to take him off the field for that, I don't know. I can't remember a situation like that where a player basically stiff-armed a cameraman or a member of the media and looking for a precedent on how the league handled that.
Yeah,
what do you guys think? You think he's going to be suspended?
Don't know if there is a precedent.
Yeah,
but
I don't.
The NFL, in their ability to drag their feet, will not do anything between now and when the Raiders.
My personal opinion, Gary, and this has more to, I think the NFL pays too much attention to social media reaction. So I think a lot of it depends. They kind of put their finger in the air and see which way are we going on Twitter and social media and people like that. I think he's going to get suspended for a game, but that's just
what's interesting, guys, is that there seemed to be more concern and more pushback on social media about what Chris Collinsworth said about, take the dresses off after that horrendous roughing the passer call. There's more pushback.
It wasn't that Troy. I think that was Troy. I think that wasn't it Troy.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
I just didn't want to. Yeah.
It was Troy, not Chris. Of course, it was Monday night. I'm sorry. More talk.
No, I agree. Yeah, Troy got a lot
about Devontae Adams. It's really interesting to me that every word, and I'm not going to take a stand on what Troy said.
Yeah.
But
I will. I think Troy was right and shouldn't.
Yeah, I have no problem with what Troy.
Yeah, I just didn't want to upset your audience here.
That's
but
okay, Gary. We upset our audience all the time.
Okay,
don't worry about that.
I mean, that was an expression that always was used.
Yeah.
About players who were soft or penalties that we didn't think were warranted. You say, "Come on, it's time to take the dresses off." You can't do that anymore, I guess.
Bill Parcells called he sent at one point was it
Terry Glenn.
Terry Glenn. I'm sorry.
Can you imagine? It's funny. I talked to Parcells the other day, and I was saying to him, Bill, you would have hated coaching today.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you can't put pads on in practice very often.
No.
In training camp, there's no two. He used to run 2 days in pads for 6 weeks. Now you can't put the players in pads more than a few times a week. There's no more 2 days. The off-season program has been cut to about 3 days. And he would have hated coaching in these days, in this era. That's why I give Belichick a ton of credit in how he's transitioned from the era where you can really get your players in great shape in the summer and work them hard during the season to a situation where you can. I know it's I don't want to open a can of worms here, but that's why you see so many teams looking horrible in September. Is because they're not working hard enough during training camp because the rules don't allow them to, and then nobody's playing in the preseason games.
We talk about that a lot here on the show, which ticks some of our fans off because we question the fact that the Eagles are one of the lighter practicing teams. We're running out of time. I know you were working on a book about life after football, and that kind of ties into what we were just talking about, the toughness of the game, what it was as compared to today. No, it had a future release date. How's it going? When exactly are we going to be on the lookout for it?
Okay, it's going to be right around the season opener next year. And it's called Once a Giant, the story of triumph, tragedy, and life after football. And I'm almost done writing it. I'm really, really excited about it. As you can see, I've written a couple books that have done well by the posters behind me. But I'm more excited about this book than I have about any that I've written. I think it's an important book. And it's not just a book that'll appeal to Giant fans. What I'm doing is kind of telling the story of the 86 Giants, the Super Bowl team, but it's not like a game-by-game, play-by-play recount of it. It's how they came together, formed a bond that was solidified by the championship, and how that led to lifelong friendships where now that these guys are in their late 50s, mid-60s, late 60s, they've stayed so close, and the fortunate ones are taking care of the unfortunate ones. And I really detail some amazing stories about what some of these guys are going through, real life situations, situations that they definitely pin to their years in football, all the contact, especially, brain trauma, and how that's the situation that's left a bunch of them in. And like I said, I think this is going to be an important book because it really attacks the issue that should be most on the minds of players from yesterday, past players from today, and high school and college players as they try to project, what the impact of what their football careers will have on their lives when football is over. So, I've talked to probably about 25 or 30 of the players and coaches from that team. I had to draw a line because I would have had enough material to write a 600-word book. But, all the key players and coaches I've spoken to. And what I'm most proud of is I got Bill Belichick to cooperate. And he cooperates with nothing other than his press conferences during the week, in which he says very little. But he was very expansive and forthcoming with me about his time with the Giants, his relationship with the Giants, his relationship with Parcells, which was fascinating. So I think it's going to be a book that, people not only in New York, but people hopefully around the country who have an interest in football, and it's kind of a human interest book too, because it really does transcend football.
Shocking that Belichick didn't say, just move on to Parcells.
Yeah.
Because
Bill loves
Parcells.
history. Bill loves history stuff. So if he does talk, you get him going on history.
I know. And you know what? He was great. And Bill and I for a long time didn't speak because I was very critical of him during the Spygate stuff. But I sat next to him. I was on the Centennial Committee for the Hall of Fame a few years ago. We sat next to each other for 9 hours in a meeting room, in a conference room in Canton at the Hall of Fame, when we were picking those 20 guys, including Harold Carmichael. And so I hadn't really spoken to him for a really long time. And I just decided, I'm going to break the ice with Bill. I'm going to say hello to him. If he wants to ignore me, he's going to have no one to talk to for 9 hours. And so, I was very gracious when he sat down. We shook hands. I said, Bill, they just lost to Tennessee in the wild card game a couple of days before, which was Brady's last game. So I thought he'd be pretty cranky. But I have to admit, and people don't believe this, we had a great time sitting next to each other. He was asking me questions because I had been on the committee for a long time, and this was his first Hall of Fame meeting. He was asking me questions about the process and why guys weren't in at that point. I was asking him his opinion on some of the older seniors because he had done a lot of whatever tape he can come up with from the 30s and 40s. He had studied it. And we've had a great email relationship since then.
Nice.
So I'm really proud of the fact that I decided when he sat down, I was going to initiate a conversation with him and then, put it on him whether he wanted to talk to me or not. And we've had a great relationship since then.
Gary, we're very much looking forward to the book. We're going to have you plenty, since it's not coming out till next September. We'll be on plenty between now and then, both this year in season and the Hall of Fame stuff. Love having you on during the Hall of Fame time as well. Appreciate you coming on with us today. We'll talk to you again soon enough, bud. Thanks.
All right, guys. Thanks a lot. Enjoy the game Sunday night. And don't make a fool of yourself in the parking lot, okay?
McMullen,
I'll do my best.
I won't be there. I'll be on the air.
Promises. No promises.
That's Gary Myers, NFL author. And he shared that story with me before about spending 9 hours with Belichick at a Hall of Fame.
You told that story on this show.
Yeah, I have. And Gary told me, and it's been prosperous for him since. He's that good a guy. He earned it. All right, coming back, Johnny Mac, Jody Mac, what we got to do? Put a bow on this show.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
Jeff D'Ambrosio, Destination Downingtown's 5-day used car super sale. Jeff puts an end to high prices now. 5 days of the best car, truck, and SUV deals ever. Over 1,000 vehicles, every make and model. Stop overpaying. See Jeff today and get a quality car, truck, or SUV now. The 5-day used car super sale. Experience how easy it is to deal at Jeff's. Nobody treats you better. Nobody gives you more. Jeff D'Ambrosio, Destination Downingtown. GoJeffAuto.com.
Score and save this football season on your car insurance. Before the next game, save up to 40% on your auto insurance policy. That's right, 40% savings. Call an audible this season and contact the Del Val Insurance Group. They're an advocate for you, not an insurance company. That means they'll get you the right coverage and save you up to 40%. Call managing partners Fran or Jim of Del Val Insurance, 215-354-0122, or score and save at dvigi.com. dvigi.com.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer 3 major services, the first one being basement waterproofing, the second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs, and then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
Over the last 17 years, we've built a reputation of growing award-winning teams across the country. Staffing is not easy, but that's what we do every day, all day. The key to our success is storytelling, asking the right questions to find the right people. Hi, I'm Gary Kane, president of Kane Partners. We want to be your staffing partner.
Clock's ticking on this Wednesday edition of Birds 365 in Dallas Week. McDonald and McMullen here. All right, I'm going to try and put you on the spot here, John. We only got a little time left, so you can't dodge and weave. I had Scott Lauber on my show on WIP last night, Beat Guy, Inquirer, Phillies. And he said to me, Jody, I've done this before in this ballpark. Got a story written. Phillies have a lead. Uh-oh, got to hit the beat. Because you think you know how it's going to end, and then it ends completely different. And damn if the Braves didn't get 3 runs last night in the 9th inning to make it a ball game, but I was able to stay the course. You're a beat guy. You've got some ideas rumbling around in your head after you caught up on your sleep yesterday. What are you thinking about today heading over there that you hope Nick Sirianni either bolsters your story or he blows your story out of the water? It's all right. I won't be writing that one if that's the stance that Nick's taking. You got one percolating for us, bud?
Well, I think scaling back to a walkthrough so late is the story midweek, and I think it's related to the offensive line. So if he goes in a different direction, that would blow up my thought process there. So that would be the best example in week. You know, I like something you said. There's only one undefeated team, but there's 2 undefeated quarterbacks. I'm telling you right now, I'm already stealing that, Joe.
That's all right.
So,
Johnny Mac.
Thank you for that.
Me line is you line.
Yeah.
Feel free at any time. You and I are partners, buddy.
Yeah. So I appreciate you for that one. I'm going to be using that this week, but that's game related. So that's probably going to be my lead for the game. I'm already telling you that. But those are the 2 things right off the bat.
And where does it go from here? Well, you got 2 places to check. First, on JAKIBSports.com. Johnny may have a missive between now and when we come back here tomorrow. I'm back in 22 hours. Are you, McMullen?
Day to day, but let's do it.
You'll be back with me tomorrow, 2 and 2 on Birds 365.
You've been listening to Birds 365. the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate, inside the locker room, and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.